Hello and welcome to another Big Al's live Q&A. I am Thomas and this is
Chris, hi.
and we're here to answer any and all of your aquatics related pet questions or reptile related perhaps, or anything pet related that we might actually be able to answer. So feel free to ask away. Any question's a good question and we'll do our best to give you all the knowledge we possibly can.
Okay, guys, with that said, I'm the voice of God today, guys. I'm Brian. I'm going to be asking your questions to Thomas and Chris. So I'm going to start off with the first question. Let's see here. Yasser Al Ali asks, do you recommend canister filters for saltwater tanks? I have a freshwater tank and I'm thinking to get a saltwater tank.
I don't necessarily recommend them. I usually recommend going with a sump system if at all possible. It increases your water volume a bit, and having an overflow system for the aquarium also keeps the surface of the aquarium turned over constantly, which is helping to essentially oxygenate the water. And because salt water is more dense, it actually doesn't hold oxygen as well as fresh water. So that kind of oxygenation is a really good thing to have. However, I have done like full-blown reef systems on canisters for smaller tanks. So like a 20-gallon with a canister filter rated for like a 100-gallon tank. And that's worked really well for me, provided I did, a weekly, 25% water change. Definitely possible, but not optimal. It just means you're going to do more maintenance. I always took care, and this is a really important part actually. I didn't use any fine filtration in the canister. If I ever needed fine filtration, I did it with a hang on or something just for maintenance and then removed it. So the canister just had coarse sponges and biomedia, and that was it. So that way you're not getting bunged up with a lot of debris and choking the biomedia. Um, but what that does mean is you do have to go in there and disturb it and get that biomedia clean. Just make sure you do it in water from the aquarium and you don't rinse it out in tap water at all. And then it's a little bit easier to manage. But that's a solid point because if you do just constantly clean it out, it'll throw the system off. Um, I did actually use chemical media as well. I had a reactor that I ran in line with the canister, and I used ChemiPure Elite for most of it. Every once in a while, if I needed, like if my phosphates got high or something, I'd throw a little bit of GFO in there, which is granular ferric oxide, which is a phosphate absorbing media. Um, but yeah, the skimmer on a tank that small, you'd have to go hang on it or internal, and I find that either or you usually get a lot of microvolts in the tank. So in lieu of a skimmer, I did weekly water changes. For a 20-gallon tank, it was 5 gallons a week, and that seemed to do well. And that system had SPS and clams,
Nice.
and it did well. So it definitely works. It's a lot more maintenance than had you just gotten a sump system. You could probably do your water change 2 to 3 weeks, have a skimmer running. If something goes wrong, it's a much smaller impact, whereas if something goes wrong with a canister system and no skimmer and everything else, you put too much of an additive or something, there's a lot more impact. But yeah, doable, not optimal.
All right, guys,
What he
perfect.
said.
All right, guys, sorry, one sec. We're just going to take a quick break here. We're having a bit of audio trouble, the audience is telling me. So we're going to go to a quick break, and then we'll be right back.
7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
All right, we're rolling. Hey, it's Thomas here, an aquatics expert with Big Al's, and today I'm going to talk to you about the mover pumps, quarantine tanks, how you can introduce fish to your new freshwater aquarium. Using plastic plants. The Aquatic Life Halo Eheim 2217 canister filter. Well, Jackson, fish have two different... So I've kept fish, birds, I've kept cats, dogs.
I have a cat and a dog, and they're really, really cute.
I have an aquarium full of guppies.
Cats, we've had lizards, fish, I've owned rabbits.
Various types of rodents, lots of different types of reptiles.
A bearded dragon, obviously. His name's Hank. I have 2 cats.
I've got a cat, and I have 2 crown-tailed betta fish.
I have 2 Shiba Inus. They're extremely cute, but they're a handful.
My girlfriend and I have a Yorkie, a Pomeranian, and 2 Shih Tzus.
Well, I keep a variety of African cichlids.
I have a 3-year-old German Shepherd named TJ. He is the best companion I could ever ask for.
I've kept corals, I've kept all kinds of invertebrates, freshwater, saltwater.
I have a saltwater aquarium, and my favorite fish is my chevron tank.
You name it, I've probably given it a home, at the dismay of my parents and or wife at this point.
Choose from over 21,000 products for your fish, reptiles,
Dogs, cats.
Birds and other small pets.
Shipped directly to your doorstep.
And when you need help, we're here for you.
In so many ways.
Call or email us.
Connect with us on social media.
Join our live Q&A sessions and you can talk with our experts face to face.
And check out our weekly YouTube videos.
On Big Al's Video on Demand.
Ask us anything.
We want to hear from you.
And we want to help you.
Bring us home.
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 We're back.
We've returned, and hopefully with full audio for the duration of our Q&A. Sorry about the technical difficulties there, but Brian has got them under control. Brian.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I'm sure some of what we had said previously was missed, so I'll just recap it really quick. Canister filters can be used on saltwater tanks. Generally, smaller saltwater tanks with a canister that's rated for like 5 times the size of that aquarium is best. Don't use fine filtering media like floss or anything like that inside the canister so it doesn't get clogged up very quickly. Make sure when you do maintenance on the canister and the media inside of it that you do it with water from the aquarium, not tap water, so that you don't disrupt the bacteria that is in that canister. And maintenance is key, so you're going to probably be doing weekly water changes to keep up with the aquarium because you don't typically run a skimmer or anything like that on there. Doable, but not optimal.
25%?
Yeah, 25% weekly. If you run a sump system, which is what I usually prefer, that way you can get a skimmer in the sump, which is going to help detract some of that maintenance. And you also add a little bit of water volume via the sump, and you essentially make it a bit easier for yourself. And if you do make a small mistake, because you have that extra water there, it's less of an impact. So it's much easier to succeed long term and to maintain a saltwater tank if you're running a sump. However, it is possible to do it with a canister.
So there.
Perfect. All right. And I think they heard that, so that's good.
Yay!
So our next question. If you have a betta, what kind of fish can stay with it?
Essentially, fish that are moderate in size, not too small because big fish eat little fish, so things like little neons and that might get munched. We are assuming that this is actually in an aquarium with a filter and likely a heater. Because if we're talking in a, a lot of people keep them in bowls or very, very small environments, and I wouldn't recommend anything in there with them except perhaps a snail. Fish to avoid would be things that an aggressive male might mistake for another betta, things with long fancy finnage such as guppies, small angelfish, things like that. But good examples might be platies.
Yeah.
Possibly some of the mid-sized tetras.
Yeah. I'd probably avoid like cherry barbs might be okay, but some other barbs might nip at the beta.
Nip at the fins, yeah.
So yeah, I would avoid barbs for the most part.
Cherry barbs, gold barbs are your more peaceful ones.
Plecos are okay, little ones.
Yeah. Cory cats. Again, a lot depends upon the size of the tank.
Yep. And the temperament of the beta. I've had betas that don't even care about, like the beta I have right now couldn't care less about anything in the tank that he's with. He's in a 12-gallon tank. There's actually guppies in with him. He doesn't care. But I've had betas in the past that I put anything, catfish on the bottom, and they chase them around, and they're just flared up and angry about it. So.
No, originally they're very territorial fish. They were called Siamese fighting fish is their other common name. So yeah, a lot depends upon the personality of the betta, and I guess you always have the option of removing the betta if it's not working out to to a decent sized bowl, or better yet, smaller aquarium where he can live on his own comfortably, and you keep your other community fish going on in a larger tank. Yeah.
Yep.
All right, guys. Anusha asks, can you recommend any plants for a 3.5-gallon betta tank?
Anubias.
They love. That's the one plant I've got a ton of in my 12-gallon. It's my wife's 12-gallon tank actually, and it's all Anubias, and that betta sleeps on the Anubias all the time. All the time, is just laying on the leaves. But there's lots of good plants. Yep, crypts are good. They're lower light too. They can handle it. I'm assuming. Yeah, you probably have just standard regular lighting, like maybe a fluorescent or something on your tank. So you don't want to get anything highlight. So crypts are really good. Java fern is pretty good. Java moss is pretty good, and Anubias is great. They do well low light, low nutrients.
Yeah. Top picks. Hydro compact, or is that needing more light than?
Hydro will be okay. It'll grow a little leggy if it doesn't have a lot of light, but it'll grow right out of the tank, literally.
Perfect, guys. Joseph asks, my African leaf fish has a fuzzy spot on his tail region. What is it? I like this little guy.
Chances are fairly good that he's been bitten by a tank mate, and basically you got to take a good look at it. If it's fuzzy and looks like stringy in its appearance, like cotton batten, then you're dealing with a true fungus, and you'd need the appropriate medications. Pimifix is a common one, but there's other ones. If it's more of a coating that doesn't have that kind of texture, but rather a bit more of a lump or slimy, then it's probably more of a bacterial problem, and you have to get the quite specific medication for that. So you'd be dealing with antibiotics or Melifix there. Melifix and Pimifix, I believe, work okay together, and they're fairly gentle. So if you're in doubt, you could treat the tank without disturbing any good bacteria and so forth with both products, and you're kind of covering your bases.
Yeah, they're plant extracts, I believe. They're rather than like a true medication.
Pimifix is clove oil, and Melifix is tea tree oil.
Right on.
Yeah, the main ingredients.
Perfect. Fish for Me Too asks, what do you think of sodium selenite in fish food ingredients list?
Can't give you a qualified answer on that one, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, neither can I.
I'm going to go and Google that. Sodium selenite?
Yeah, Fish for Me Too. If you want to expand on that a little bit, whatever specific question you have, we'd love to.
Yeah, we'd actually love to learn more.
It's obviously some kind
not going to have all the answers, but there's a lot of stuff in fish food that's not that great.
Yeah, filler or preservative potentially. Yeah, we'd have to look at what the actual chemical is and what it's most often used for.
Yeah.
And we could go from there, but that's a research question.
Yeah. Now I'm interested.
So am I. Cool.
All right, well, hopefully we can get back to
homework.
this one. Yeah. So we do have a couple reptile questions. Despite this being an aquatics Q&A, we do have some reptile questions that I know Thomas is always happy to answer to the best of his ability.
Yay.
Seeing as he is so experienced with reptiles. So, with that said, Elvis Bear asks, are blue tongue skinks poisonous or venomous?
No. Not that I'm aware of. Very common lizard. They got strong jaws. They get fairly big, and they like snails. One of their favorite foods, snails. I've also kept them on things like roaches, which can be very difficult to come by. Lots of places ban species of roaches, but you can get things like grasshoppers and larger caterpillars and stuff canned from ZooMed, which works really well for them. But no, I don't believe that they are in any capacity venomous or poisonous. Mind you, I have never eaten one or heard of anybody who's tried. And I do know people who have been bit and nothing happened.
Geckos can be venomous though, can't they? The tokays?
I don't know.
I believe I've heard that. But
I've been bitten by a tokay and nothing happened. So I hope they're not venomous. I might just be immune.
You might be immune.
Tokays have a ridiculous jaw pressure though. Even a very, very small tokay can leave one hell of a mark on you.
All right, so we have one more reptilian question here regarding excavator clay. Ewan asks, if you use excavator clay and make some hides and your lizard or snake goes inside and gets sick, how do you get it out?
Break it. If you can't get your animal out just by reaching in and pulling it out, you will just need to dismantle it. And excavator clay can be soaked and reused, so you're not going to hurt anything by just dismantling the enclosure and pulling it out. And sometimes, in the best interest of the animal, that's what you have to do.
Yeah, definitely get it wet first, because if you try and break it, you don't want to crush your animal, right? So you probably want to get it wet first.
You'd want to get it wet in the points. Like if it's an arc, I'd wet 2 points or 3 points wherever it's touching, and then lift it out. And obviously, you want to do it safely. If there's anything on top of it, you'd pull all of that out first, and then slowly take it apart and remove the animal.
Perfect. Let's see, the next question is from Dustin Harris. He says, I have 6 or so male guppies in a 29-gallon. They seem to be constantly harassing each other, and my 2 rainbows in there. Their tails look nipped. What should I do to keep them from beating up on each other?
They do that.
Yeah, separate them, put more fish in.
Add more.
Yeah, divider.
Maintain a reasonable amount of aquarium salt in the water if you don't have anything that would be bothered by it, just to prevent possible infections. Sometimes adding a few more might help just by spreading the aggression around. Male guppies will bother and harass each other quite considerably, and rainbow fish can be fin nippers as well. It's an interesting kind of a mix.
Yeah.
Possibly adding some bushy plants might give them a few hiding spots.
Visual barriers, something that they can put in between each other so that they have a place to run away to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got 5 guppies in with that beta at my house, and somebody's got a nipped tail at some point every week, and it usually changes, and that's just how they do. Male guppies they frolic hard.
Yeah. Adding females won't help.
No, then you'll just have a female getting chased by everyone.
All right, guys, we have another question by @Reef. Just to all our viewers out there, @Reef, I think his question is sort of multifaceted, and some of you guys slipped questions in between. So I'm just going to do @Reef's question in its entirety, then I'll get back to everyone else who's above him in the list. So @Reef, he starts off by saying, I am reaching 1,000 subscriptions on his channel, and I want to say thank you because you encourage me to do quality work and video. Thank you for all the information.
Oh.
So that's very nice. Thank you, Eric. We appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, let's see here. Is it okay to mix carbon and GFO, or is it better to keep them separated?
Personally, I separate them, and the reason being is they have 2 different life expectancies. Carbon, in general, will last as little as a few days, up to at most a month. But typically when I'm dealing with carbon in a reef tank, depending on the type of carbon that it is, I will remove it on a weekly basis. I don't run carbon indefinitely. The only exception being something that has carbon in it already, like what was that product I plugged earlier? The ChemiPure Elite.
Yeah.
It has some carbon in it, and I will leave that in for the life expectancy of that product. But in general, GFO will last you a month or more, carbon a month or less. So keeping them together is just, you could be throwing out your GFO far too early. or you could be running carbon way longer than it's actually effective, and then you're not helping anything.
And make sure that you're using quality carbon, because low-grade carbons will often leach phosphates and other things into the water.
Correct. Reef-grade carbon, 100%.
All right, and this is another part of his question. He says, and everyone forgive me for not using the right terminology. I'm a video guy, not a fish guy, but I will translate it to these guys. And my NO3 is 0, and my phosphate is at 0.01 ppm, but I still get some algae. Why do you think that may be?
You're always going to get algae.
Yeah. When you see people's tanks and they always look clean, like the glass always looks perfect, everything looks great all the time.
They
it's
just
because,
clean
yeah,
them.
they're cleaning it before they take a photo, or like a store when you walk in, they clean it every day when they get there, right? That's constant maintenance. I've never owned a tank in my life that was algae free every day of the week for months on end.
Okie dokie. So with that said, Economy16 asks, how do you get live corals in your aquarium?
With a slingshot.
Well,
that's an open-ended question.
It is a bit, but we'll translate that into basic coral keeping 101.
Sure.
Okay. Or is that an acclimation question, or do we?
Or
want to...
where do the corals come from?
You know what, Connie, do you want to maybe add a little more context into your question, just to give these guys a bit of a direction on how to answer that, and then we will get back to it right away. So leave your question below with a little more context, and I'll re-ask it to them, okay? So we'll get right back to your question.
Thank you.
Justina Fife asks, my one betta had a hole in his stomach. I have no idea what it is, but I need to know what the problem is and what medication will fix this.
Could be a worm.
Yikes. I'm not a medication guy.
Look for something poking out of it. If there is, it's an internal worm, and those are pretty serious, unfortunately. They're becoming more and more common. Difficult to treat, depending upon where you are. If you're in the US, flubendazole, levomazole are meds that are commonly available and used for working on such. Up here in Canada, they're not legal without a vet prescription. Yeah, praziquantel would be your other best bet. Take a really good look at it, though. Is it really a hole, or is it more just like a sore or an abrasion? If it's that, then it's could have rubbed itself. It could just be something very minor and relatively benign, which you could try Melafix, Betafix on, or antibiotics. If you were able to listen into the previous question about the African leaffish, to sort of be aware about possible secondary infections that are either bacterial or fungal on any kind of wound, and treat appropriately.
Okay. Ewan asks, what range of food would you feed a community tank? Because I don't just want to feed flake food.
Great. I'm glad to hear that one. You are what you eat.
Yeah.
Good quality flake as a general one, maybe 50% of the diet.
Yep.
I would still feed an algae-based food, also known in terms of, if we're talking smaller fish, spirulina flakes, veggie flakes. I would go with about 25% of that. Even fish that are not specifically vegetarians wind up ingesting algae and vegetable matter in the stomach contents of what they do eat. And then for the rest, I would go with a bit of frozen food as a treat once or twice a week. Brine shrimp or bloodworms.
Yeah.
I would suggest that with the frozen food that unless you have a very large tank where it won't make a big difference, you're best to thaw the piece of frozen out in a cup of water, lukewarm, not too hot, maybe for 10 or 15 minutes. Thaw it out and rinse it through a net under some cold water, just to get rid of a lot of the blood and juices and very fine particles that otherwise are just causing extra pollution to your tank. 50, 25, 25. Pretty good diet for
Absolutely.
a general situation.
And it doesn't have to be every day. You don't have to have like that makeup of food every single day. You can break it up over the week. They could have flakes for 2 days of the week, and then spirulina, and then if you find that you have fish that will eat some of those things but not the others, then you're going to have to mix them together a little bit more. Or potentially just those fish have a day off from feeding, which isn't necessarily a bad thing.
No. Also be aware that there are liquid vitamins. We carry, I think, Vidichem.
Yeah, Vidichem. I think Zoe is one of the soaks we still have.
Yeah, Vidichem you can actually just put into your water, every week, every couple of weeks. Flake food is highly convenient, but it is notorious for having a relative low nutritional content, just because of the heat that they use making the stuff.
Correct.
It destroys a lot. So if you look at the ingredient list, it's huge, with a lot of big names that you can't pronounce, such as maybe sodium. What was that?
Sodium something that we're gonna have to look
yeah,
up
that we
later.
want to look up. But they have to add back a lot of vitamins and other things because of the manufacturing process. If your fish are a little bit larger, even pellets actually have a little bit of a higher nutritional content than flakes, just because
Absolutely.
of the manufacturing process.
Okay, we have some clarification by Fish for Me on the sodium selenite, and we'll get to that in just 1 second.
Cool.
So thank you for that, Fish for Me. But we do have another question from Conmi. Her question is, what is the recommended size for a goldfish's tank?
In my professional opinion, I would say 1 goldfish per 20 gallons of water. That's me. They are heavy biolobe fish. They get very big and heavy bodied with big organs, and they process a lot of food, which means they make a lot of poop. So yeah, the more space you have for them and more water volume, the less maintenance it's going to be. And just going off of the average hobbyist's maintenance, or not even hobbyist, but just the average aquarium owner's maintenance habits, less than 20 gallons per goldfish can lead to a goldfish living a very short life.
Yeah, I wouldn't be far off on that. I would say probably about 15 gallons. So, yeah. The larger the tank, though, I think, it doesn't necessarily translate to, if you had a 30-gallon tank, you can only have like 1 or 2 goldfish. You might be able to do 3 in a 30. So the bigger the tank, the better your filtration, a little bit more stable water volume. A lot of it just comes back down to how willing are you to do more frequent maintenance.
With 5 and a 55, 5 full-size fancy goldfish in a 55-gallon tank,
you're doing some pretty heavy maintenance.
Once a week, 25 to 50% water changes.
Yeah.
They are poop machines.
Yep.
And that's from personal experience. That was the only goldfish tank I've had personally, and it was a struggle to keep clean.
Yeah.
There was physical debris you could see because of how much waste they put out.
Okay, so as for the clarification on sodium selenite, Fish for Me 2 says, sodium selenite is used to supply trace amounts of selenium to fish food. Those opposed to sodium selenite, or its close chemical cousin sodium selenate, are concerned about what they believe to be a notably thin margin of safety between an effective dose of the mineral and the amount that could cause toxicity.
I would err on the side of caution. If there are people out there who, if you can substantiate that they have, good knowledge of chemistry and of these things, that have concerns about that, then I would err on the caution side of things and choose a product that maybe doesn't have that. And again, going back to our sort of basic diet sort of scenario, if you choose a good variety of foods, and the broader the variety, as long as it's within the sort of range of what the fish can eat, you should be able to accommodate their needs that way without having to get a lot of additives and chemicals put in. So again, it's not something, I think we're still going to want to go and do some homework on this. It's got my interest.
Absolutely.
But if in doubt, play it safe.
Yeah, I've even in dart frog keeping, there's this desire to bridge the gap in any sort of potential shortcomings in dietary needs for the animals, which I can appreciate. However, sometimes it does more harm than good. Somebody inexperienced dealing with supplementing something for the sake of supplementing it, not because there's necessarily an issue with what they're already feeding, because just because something's not necessarily listed or what that product does for the animal could potentially be filled by a different product and have the same effect. I would just fully agree and say err on the side of caution. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Unless there's a specific problem that's fixing for whatever species of fish or animal it's being given to, I would just not bother with it. I'd probably avoid it.
Yeah. There's other ways of getting things into your foods too. I mean, I can't speak to selenium. It's not an element that I know a lot about in terms of the fishes or any aquatic animals' needs. But I breed and raise a lot of cichlids, and one of the things that I do to assure that my fry get the best start in life I can give them, I use decapsulated Artemia brine shrimp as opposed to hatching live, both for the sake of economy as well as it actually has a slightly higher nutritional value because they burn up so much energy trying to hatch. So it's dry. So one of the tricks that I do is I soak it in water briefly for about 5 minutes, and then I go and feed it with a turkey baster. But to that water mixture, I add spirulina, like food grade spirulina powder. That's got a million good things in it, and it's all natural. There's all kinds of trace elements and all kinds of good stuff in that. I can add anything I want. I can add astaxanthin if I'm breeding yellow labs and red zebras and I want their colors to be strong. It's high in carotene. Again, all natural. You can add the Vitacam. You can add any number of things that you know are safe. So if there are concerns and you're feeding any manner of dry food, then you can look at, well, maybe I can get something else in there in a different way.
Yeah.
And it's using ingredients that you know are natural and are safe.
I will say most reputable manufacturers of fish food are going to do their research before they put food out there on the market. So I don't know what food we're talking about, and I do have X amount of faith in specific brands. Omega C, Cobalt's pretty good, Hikari for instance. So if it popped up on one of their food products, I'm still saying I would personally look into it to find out, exactly what it's doing for my fish or not doing for my fish, etc. But these people have been doing fish food for a very long time, and I'm sure that they wouldn't do something that is going to potentially harm your fish. If they would put an additive in like that, they have to have a reason. I don't know what it is. But
you might contact the manufacturers and ask their opinion on that. But if you're not feeding that flake food or that food exclusively too, then you're also probably causing a little harm. But again, if it ain't broke, don't fix.
Yeah.
Go organic, man.
Yeah.
All right, everyone. Thanks so much for all your questions. We have a ton coming up. We're going to get to every single one of them. We promise we will. The one follow-up question for this topic I wanted to ask was, Fish for Me asks, I'm assuming pet and fish food goes through the same safety standards as human food to be sold in Canada, or am I wrong on this?
It does have to go through the FDA, but I'm sure the standards for pet food is different than people food.
I would agree. There's definitely regulations, and there have been changes to the regulations within, I think it's been almost 10 years now.
Yeah, it's been a while.
What were they? There was stuff in the news like the melamine. So whenever something like that comes out, then there's always going to be a reaction by government agencies. I would agree with Thomas that I don't know enough about the regs, but I don't think that they're of the same quality, the same standards. I doubt that very much. As I feed my dog chicken scraps, that are from a butcher and that, but those are not human grade. That's not it's not the same chicken breast that a human's going to eat. It's going to be the leftovers, right? They are looking for bovine, so bone meal became a big issue after mad cow disease.
Right.
Don't eat your flake food. Although it should be pretty safe now because they put a lot of regs in there to prevent that.
Not that I was planning on eating my flake food anyway. Just a quick note for you.
Too much information probably for some.
I'm sure we've all done it at some point. Maybe just me.
Actually, I have to.
Yes. See? Just a quick note for you guys. We've done something.
I think it was.
Tetramin. Actually, yeah, the brown cap.
Yeah.
One of the first one. We're food buddies.
You too.
We've done something really cool. We've hooked up with the Coral Restoration Foundation. We wanted to start giving back to the reefs and try to help essentially aid them in any way we possibly could. So we hooked up with the Coral Restoration Foundation. We're supporting them. They do awesome things for the reef. I'm sure I can get Brian to drop something somewhere for people to see. You can go to the Coral Restoration Foundation's website, see what they're all about. What we've done is we've decided that for every Big Al's branded product that we sell for the month of May, we're going to give 25 cents to the Coral Restoration Foundation. It doesn't matter what the cost of the product is, if it's a 50-cent sponge or a $5 water conditioner. That 25 cents is going directly to them. And we've partnered up with some other companies as well. So every month we'll have a different company and their products will be featured, and then that company will be donating that 25 cents to the Coral Restoration Foundation. So we can try to get back to the reefs a bit and save them, because some of them are in some pretty dire shape right now, and Coral Restoration Foundation is actually doing a fantastic job of propagating coral and putting it back where it belongs.
Great.
Perfect. So with that said, we'll get back to some questions because we have a bunch of good ones waiting for us. Fish for Me Too also asks, is rust from an algae magnet left in the tank detrimental to fish?
Yes and no. The reason that's twofold is because technically GFO, which is ferric oxide, is rust. However, the ferrous magnets that are rusting in your tank, or whatever portions of them that might be rusting, we can't guarantee that there isn't copper in that, or nickel, or tin, or whatever else. I have no idea what's in there. I don't know what they make these products out of. I don't know if there's a casing on it. Rust in general from a product in your aquarium is a no-no, and I would remove it.
But I wouldn't freak out.
No. I wouldn't. I wouldn't be super concerned. I'll say that I had a UV sterilizer that had a stainless steel sleeve in it that started to rust, and it caused major issues. And I didn't find it for about 6 months after it probably started rusting. And when I finally did remove that UV sterilizer, and I ran a media called Cuprosorb, I believe,
yes,
by Seachem in a reactor for about 3 weeks, and my corals went from being very pale and very retracted to being colorful and big and exactly what they should have been. So heavy metals in the tank can be extremely detrimental. Rust in general can be extremely detrimental, but it's not something you need to freak out about. Just remove the product that's causing the rust. If you notice your corals are looking, or fish or whatever, are looking a little pale or a little off or not quite where you want them to be, run a product like Cuprosorb or any other metal absorbent media, and that should pull it all out for you, and then you can just wipe your hands of it and be happy. It's a soft spot for me. I was really sad about my tank, and then I finally figured out what the problem was.
Yeah, it was bugging you for a while.
Yeah.
And I can attest to how they looked after a couple of weeks. They really did awesome.
It was a very quick bounce back, but it just goes to show how something you can't see with your eye in your water can cause such a dramatic change. Anyways.
All right, guys, we're getting to all your questions here. Ewan, Elvis, Ashvini, Sandra. We're getting to all your questions. Don't worry about it. We will get to them shortly. But our next question is the follow-up on the coral from Comment 16.
Okay, I was waiting for that.
Yeah, they asked, how do you get them from one place to another, like from one tank to another?
Okay. Acclimation.
One tank to another. If we're talking store tank to your house tank, usually at the store they'll bag them up in a bag for you or whatever, they give it to you in. You take it home. My acclimation process for corals is to typically give them I don't usually drip most corals. If it's a really sensitive coral that I'm worried about, I might drip it into the system. The process of dripping is to take, the coral and whatever water it's in, put it in a container, get a airline tubing, siphoning with a knot in it or a little valve so you can control the drip that's coming out of it from your aquarium into that container. And over the course of an hour or so, allow that container to fill so it's 50 part old water, 50 part water from your tank, and then you transfer it to your aquarium. That way, if there is any small differences or even larger differences in water parameters, that coral is not just going, from that water to your tank. It's got that nice little transition. I will say my typical process for corals, which we've actually did a video on, we put that on YouTube, right? The coral acclimation video, is to take those corals, put them in a container with a small power head or pump to circulate the water, and then use a coral defense type product. So it's a dip for corals that will help to remove any potential pests, predators, disease problems that coral could potentially have off of it before it goes into your tank. Because there are certain nasties like Montipora eating flat or nudibranchs or various types of flatworms or red bugs and all kinds of stuff that could be on that coral that you don't want to transfer to your main display tank full of corals you've been keeping and pouring your heart into. So that process is the one I usually go with. It's also really important that once it goes from the dip that you rinse it off in water from your aquarium before it goes in, because you don't want that dip getting into your tank either.
And look in any nooks and crannies on the corals. It's if you have a particularly large reef tank or a particularly rare and valuable species, you may well want to even consider like a coral quarantine tank.
Yep. Yeah, have a separate
sometimes
small.
The dips are great, but sometimes they're not 100%.
No. They're rarely 100%. I would say they're 80%. There are things that will survive dips. Eunice worms will survive dips a lot of the time. Mantis shrimp can survive dips a lot of the time. Coral crabs like gorilla crabs, which are terrible in SPS colonies and other corals, they'll pick at the flesh and destroy them slowly over time. They can survive a coral dip a lot of the time too.
Okay, so Conmi, I've actually linked that coral dip video in the comments section, so if you want to check that out, it's there for you to click on, so have at her. Our next question from Ashvini asks, how to fix a nitrate poisoning in a cichlid tank?
Water change.
Yeah.
Solution to pollution is dilution. Who said that? Dr. Zeus?
This guy did.
Not
he
me.
said it. The solution
to pollution
is dilution. So dilute it. Yeah, so nitrates, the fastest way to get nitrates out of your tank is to physically change the water.
Yep.
It's the most effective way. You will, if you do a 50% water change, you will cut them in half, and then whatever's left, if you do wait a few days and do another 25 to 50% water change, you're going to cut whatever was left in either a quarter or half, and you can keep going like that. If it's really bad, I would start with maybe 30%,
yep.
and then wait 2 days, 30%, wait 2 days, 30%, wait 2 days, 30% until it comes
or each
down.
time, what I often tell customers is very similar to that. Add an extra 10% every time. That's pretty safe. So if you've neglected the tank for a long time, even a 50% water change, the chemistry of that new water could be so radically different. And while most cichlids are quite hardy, it could still be pretty stressful.
Put them in a shock, yeah.
Yeah, so you might start with 25% or so. The next time, in a couple of days, add 10% to that water change. Next time, add 10% until you hit about 50. By the time you've done that, or up to a couple of 50s, you should be like right down to where you should be.
Yeah.
And again, if this is a neglect situation, be mindful of removing physical waste in the gravel and that as well, because all that stuff simply breaks back down into more nitrates.
Mm-hmm. The mulm, yeah. It's important to do a gravel cleaning along with it.
Yeah. If you have a lot of rock work, try and, without disturbing it too much, but try and fan in there and flush it out as you're siphoning, as you have your hose around those areas. It all depends upon the situation. If it's a severe neglect situation, that's,
just
you can cause
make sure while you're doing this water change, or the series of water changes, do not touch your filter.
Yeah.
If you touch your filter during that time frame and you do any maintenance on it, there's a good chance you will disrupt too much beneficial bacteria, and you could actually cause a crash in your tank, and you'd start getting ammonia, which is even worse.
Yeah.
So do the series of water changes, leave the filter alone. Once the nitrates are down, give it about a week, and then clean the filter.
Great, so our next question is from Fish for Me Too, asking a lot of questions today, so thanks for that. Cool. The question is, smallest tank size for a trigger? I know depending on the type, but will a 90 cut it?
That's a Picasso, maybe?
Maybe, yeah.
There are some smaller species of trigger. Picassos are one of the smaller ones that I've worked with personally. Nigers get pretty big, but
yeah, but they're relatively peaceful.
They're also pretty.
What about blue throats?
Oh, blue throats are actually pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Peaceful,
Blue throats are a solid
small.
one.
Yeah.
Typically reef safe.
Yeah. Yeah. They're plankton eaters.
Yeah.
So are the sargassums, but we're digressing. I'm not sure about sizing on the sargassum trigger.
I have no idea how big they get.
Yeah.
Blue throat's probably, out of the suggestions we just made, for reef, blue throat's probably the best option you've got. If it's, Nigers are in the middle. I've seen them take out shrimp. They won't touch coral, but I've seen them take out shrimp, and I've seen them nip at clams.
They can be pretty mean.
Yeah. But, and then...
Blue throat is probably the safest out of any trigger I can think of. I would avoid things like clown triggers, undulateds.
Those are all nasty fish. Pinktails?
Pinktails, yeah.
If
That's another one
it's-
that's supposed to be reef safe, though. Because it's plankton eating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're mean as all.
I-
Mean as all. If it's a reef system, blue throats. If it's not a reef system and you just want some, a trigger in with your eels and whatever else you're keeping, lionfish, I don't know. A Picasso is probably a good trigger to try. Nigers are cool.
All right, Sandra asks, how can I properly clean my tank with my python when I'm trying to avoid free-swimming platy and molly fry?
Good luck.
Very carefully.
It's tough.
I would be... I'd be less concerned about sucking up fish than most people. Most people are overly paranoid, I think, about sucking up fish. It can happen, but the pull in that broader tube per section of space, per area, is much gentler than just that what you see going into your drain, out of that half-inch opening.
I've had fish go into the tube, not fry, but I've had fish swim into the tube, realize they're getting sucked somewhere, and swim back out.
Yeah, fish
It's
will naturally
relatively
swim
gentle.
against a current. That's an instinct. I would just be quick, with your hand on the hose, ready to kink it at a moment's notice, and then you can literally just, if the fish is in the tube, you just raise it above the water level and let the water and the fish go right back into the tank. It should not suck them up that quickly that you can't at least, stop things as required. But I wouldn't be overly paranoid, and at the risk of sounding callous, your tank needs the water change more than you might need one platy out of many. I hope people won't hate me for saying that.
You can always go into the bucket and find it after. The trip down the tube is not dangerous. I've had fish go through the tube, and as long as they're smaller than the tube and they can't get stuck in it, they just end up in the bucket, and then you get them later.
Yeah. Well, this is a python they're talking about, so I
guess like the one that hooks up to your sink?
Sink, yeah.
Oh, then that's not good.
Well, you could put a net under the output, maybe.
No, because they'll get trapped inside of the bell.
Oh, the small fry would probably go right
you're
through.
right. But then they've also gone through cold tap water.
Briefly. We'll be optimists here.
Optimists.
Next question, please.
All right. Next
We're gonna
up.
get into trouble.
I know, right?
Next up, optimistically, is Ewan saying, I need to dose some medicine to one of my community tanks, and it says on the bottle, do not use with shrimps, and I have a mono shrimps. Will it be okay? It's natural medicine with tea tree in it.
No, it will not be okay. Remove the shrimp and then medicate the tank, and then run carbon and then put the shrimp back. Or don't medicate.
Yeah, and shrimp will generally not carry fish diseases, so there isn't a lot of a big issue if they've been out of that tank for any reasonable amount of time, like a week or two. There's very little chance of reinfesting your tank.
Yeah.
Besides, any medication never gets 100% of whatever disease animal was there to begin with.
It's essentially you're trying to knock it down to a point where the fish's immune system can catch back up.
Yeah, so remove the shrimp.
All right, straight to the point. Thanks, guys. Ewan, remove the shrimp. Conmy16 asks, how can you get salt water? Because I can't find it in my local Big Al's Supercenter.
Really? We sell salt water?
Most places do, but there's other locations. You just make it yourself.
Yeah, there's two ways.
I mean, every Big Al's and almost most large pet stores will carry saltwater.
Sea salt.
Yeah, saltwater crystals. Yeah.
So, and if not, we actually do have it online as well to ship. Personally, I really like It is. It's expensive to ship because it's really heavy. So you can get it at your local Big Al's, and that's probably the best way to do it. But it's essentially a sack of salt or a bucket of salt that you mix with water and use a hydrometer or a refractometer to measure the specific gravity or essentially the amount of salt that's in the water, so you know that you've mixed it to the correct level. My favorite salt, just generally, that's in a mid-range for price point, so it's not the cheapest salt, it's not the most expensive salt, would be Reef Crystals by Instant Ocean. It's probably one of the more affordable reef-specific salts. If you're not doing a reef and you're just doing fish only and you want to do saltwater, the plain Instant Ocean purple bucket works fantastic. The difference between Instant Ocean and Instant Ocean Reef Crystals is that the Reef Crystals has higher amounts of calcium, magnesium, strontium, molybdenum, etc. for corals. So yeah, we do, and every Big Al's has access to it. So if you wanted, you could always ask, and they could bring it in for you. We sell pre-mixed 5-gallon jugs of salt water that you can take home to do water changes or start your aquarium as well. So just speak to the manager of the store, and they can point you in the direction of that.
If they don't carry, they can get it. And in terms of the actual water that you would use, if you're going to make your own, if it's a reef tank, you definitely want to use reverse osmosis water. RO water, which you can either purchase a unit, and the units are sized according to their production, and which that's relative to the sort of tank you have. That's the most effective way long term to go.
Or we also sell that in jugs.
Yeah, but again, if they're particular Big Al's, well, who knows? If it's fish only, you can get away with dechlorinated tap water, but RO is still better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you'll have less algae and other nuisance problems.
Perfect. And I've linked the Instant Ocean Reef Crystals in the comments below. So if you want to check that out on bigalspets.ca, our online store, you can do that. But as they mentioned, you should be able to go into your Big Al's and get what you need there. So just make sure to ask any associate. But I have linked it, so feel free to check it out. Our next question from Ashvini. He says, if I'm an experienced fish keeper, what other fish could I keep that you recommend, not African cichlids?
It comes down to personal taste.
Largely, yeah.
But what's your favorite freshwater fish? Let's do it this way.
Wow.
For an experienced keeper. That's not an African
It's
cichlid.
not an, I mean, you're talking to a guy that's
The African cichlid guy, I just asked what his favorite fish was, freshwater. That's not an African cichlid.
If you want a real challenge, oh, well, there's interesting and then there's challenge. So if you're looking for a real challenge, I would say discus.
Oh, yeah. That's a tough one, for sure.
Because, you know, they're high maintenance fish. They're not super difficult if you do give them what they need, and that applies for a lot of things. Interesting freshwater fish. A lot of the ones I can think of are cichlids.
Okay, you sit on that.
Okay, well here,
Oh,
you know, here. Well, let's talk about sort of theme tanks here. How about something that's a little bit more nocturnal?
Okay.
How about a tank that has things like elephant nose in there and eels and kind of cool, unusual fish and a few nice plecos?
That would be cool. Elephant nose are very cool. I've personally not kept them, but I have thought about it many a time. I just haven't been willing to set up a tank specifically for them because they are a skittish nocturnal fish. So those clear leaves tubes work well for them?
Yes, they use, well, same with ghost knives.
Ghost
Because
knives?
they use electrical conductivity to sense food in the mud. They like to be in groups, so you either keep one in a tank or you keep a bunch. You don't keep two.
Yeah.
And they do get big, so you got to give them a fair bit of room. I mean, they can get to be about 8-10 inches long, depending upon your tank size.
Killifish?
I don't know. Killifish are interesting. You don't see them in a lot of pet stores. They don't seem to sell all that well, and most species have a relatively short period of time in terms of longevity.
For me?
Go.
Yeah, okay, so for me, some of my favorite fish are the oddballs, weird things, clown knifefish, they're predatory, wolffish, they're predatory.
Huge!
Lungfish, no, I'm just kidding. I'm big into catfish. I've always thought catfish were really cool, and I find them to be pretty easy fish to keep. I really like hoplo catfish and the other species of armored catfish. Hoplos don't get massive, but some of the other ones do. Then I like ripsaw catfish, very big fish.
But surprisingly gentle.
Super gentle. It's like a triple XL Cory catfish.
Yeah.
They're just gigantic, gentle giants that you can like hand feed. And probably one of my favorite fish of all time, other than arowana, are ropefish and polypterus. They're prehistoric-looking fish. They look more like eels than they do like fish. They're very easy to keep in my experience, and they're just really cool to look at. So that's what I'd go with. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff. Leaf fish are really cool.
Those are neat.
Stingrays,
toadfish,
freshwater stingrays,
teacup rays, like reticulated.
Well, it depends upon what size of tank you're able to give them. Even the smallest species, which are your ticks, which are commonly sold as a teacup, still get a disc size of over a foot.
Right.
And we need a tank eventually of at least about 100 gallons or more.
Yeah,
but rays are cool, and you can hand feed them, even pet them, and so forth quite safely.
Yeah.
They're neat.
There's lots of cool stuff.
So much. It's like kid in the candy store. Like,
electric catfish. Look that up. I used to have one of those. One of the coolest things I've ever had.
Can't keep much with that.
Very painful fish to work with if you poke it.
Don't pick it up off the floor if it jumps out. At least not by hand.
Even when they're this big, they give you quite a jolt.
All right, guys, we have a ton of questions still to get to. Everyone, we will get to your questions. I know you guys want us to answer them, and we will. We're just going in sequence, all right? So sit tight, and we'll get to your questions, so don't worry about it. Elvis Bear, your question is, I want a snake, but my mom won't let me because she doesn't want it to bite her or to escape. And what kind of snake is good for beginners?
I can't help if your mom's got a phobia. A snake phobia is a very common one, so I don't know what to say about that. I will say that if it's in a proper enclosure and your mom's not poking it in the face, there's no reason it should ever escape or that she would get bit. In terms of beginner snakes, one of the most placid and easy snakes to work with for a beginner, although they are a pretty sizable snake, is a ball python. It's a python, which makes it sound like it's going to get 16 feet long because that's the misnomer that every python or boa is like a bajillion feet long. Ball pythons top out, even like females, at realistically about 6 feet. And like the biggest I've ever heard of personally is about 8 foot, and that's a massive ball python. And there was a female, and it's a fable. I don't even know if it actually exists. Heard of. 6 foot is a pretty big female. Males stay smaller, about 4 feet. They're about yay big around. That sounds massive, but when they're coiled up, they're only this big. And they're very often coiled up. They're slow snakes. They eat infrequently. Once a week when they're young. Adults can go once every 2 to 3 weeks. Very simple pets to keep. Very, very, very easy. If you don't want a python, because the word python is scary, and I'm sure your mom would just flip if she said, if you told her, hey, they told me to get a python, she'd probably just kick you out. Corn snakes are very, very easy to work with. Yeah, that guy on YouTube, get him. Corn snakes are very placid, very easy to work with, very small. Great option as well. There's tons of different snakes that work well, but those two are probably the most common, least expensive to start with, and would be very, very rewarding for you as a first-time snake keeper.
Perfect. Okay, so let's move along here. Ewan asks, what's your opinion on feeding live food?
To what?
He does not specify.
I'm going to assume we're talking fish. There are species of fish that simply won't take anything but live food. Some of those you can convert. But, for instance, fry, a lot of the time going live is going to be easier. Clownfish larvae, for instance, you have to feed live rotifers to. You have to culture copepods. I have no problem with it personally. The only sticking point I have with live food is when you are feeding larger fish live foods like feeder goldfish and feeder minnows, just there's some caution that has to be made with that, just because feeder fish aren't necessarily always the cleanest fish. So just be careful that when you're, feeding your fish to other fish, that you're not picking the one out of the tank that has been there for like 3 weeks and is emaciated and you don't know what's wrong with it. Just flush that one, euthanize it. Feed your fish healthy fish, and make sure you're feeding your feeder fish. Keep your feeder fish happy, because if they're not happy and healthy, then your fish that are eating them are not going to be happy and healthy.
Yeah, well, it's like I mentioned earlier with what I do with some of my fry and the foods you give them. You can give, if you are using feeder fish or any live food that you have to feed to keep it alive, say like live adult brine shrimp, you have to feed that to keep it going, or it's going to die and it has no nutritional value. That you give them good food. So again, you can put things into them that ultimately wind up in your fish. Live food can introduce diseases and parasites. Live blackworms can bring in stuff to your tank. So know your source, look at it, take care of it. I like live food as a good treat if it's clean and if you know it, but if you can generally avoid it for most of the time, and a lot of fish you can.
Mm-hmm. Most you definitely can.
In terms of, say, feeding like things like feeder goldfish, which are freshwater and have, I think, a pretty high fat content, to saltwater fish, that's generally considered to be a no-no.
Taboo, yeah. That's not a good idea.
Again, once in a blue moon, it's not going to be the end of the world, but on a long-term basis, it's actually not good. Yeah, there's a lot. Without specifics, there's a lot you can go on.
Yeah.
If you're going to do, some guys that have saltwater preds actually breed mollies.
Yep. Mollies can actually go full salt. I've done it. You can keep mollies in salt water. I think the take home is there's an art almost to feeding live food to your fish, and you, in my opinion, should treat your feeders better than you would treat your actual fish that they're going into, because they're what's going to essentially be keeping your fish alive and healthy. So the work you put into your feeders is exactly what goes into your display animals or your pets.
Yeah. Or your live brine or your blackworms or anything, right? If you've got blackworms and you're keeping them in the fridge and you're not changing your water often and they're going all skunky, you go feed that to your discus, you're going to have problems.
Yeah.
I have a buddy of mine that's, well, he was born and raised in Holland, and he's had some of the most amazing tanks over the years that I've known him, and that's been a long time. Every spring he goes out and collects Daphnia. He cultures, he's got a 60-gallon barrel that his rainwater goes in, and his wife hates him because he lets mosquito larvae live in it. And he goes and scoops them out. Like, his fish do amazingly, but he knows. He's taking care of his stuff.
Yeah, the effort's put in.
His food. It's you are what you eat. Right?
Yeah. Feeders are not an afterthought. The effort you put into them will then play out on your fish. So I think.
Great. John says, great show. Look forward to it every time.
Yay!
Thank you.
No question there. Just thought he'd tell us
this
that.
guy.
So.
He's like an encyclopedia.
So are you.
Nah.
And Scott asks, what are your cleanup crew suggestions for a 120 reef tank?
Cleanup crew? 120 reef? My favorites, I like trochus snails. Turbo snails are pretty good. I stay away from most hermit crabs for cleanup in a reef because they can often do more harm than good. Crabs are opportunistic feeders for the most part, so if they don't see enough food that they want to pick off, or algae or whatever, they'll just start pulling other things off or eating food out of corals that you've put there, and so I avoid them. The only crab I will generally put in, or I guess there's two species for hermit, or blue legs. Just be aware that as they grow, any small snails will get murked so that they can find themselves a bigger home. Emerald crabs, I am pro for the most part. However, people have also claimed that they are touchy. I find they do a good job on things like bubble algae, which is why I usually include one.
What about quantities? He's giving you a tank size, so can you
120. I would probably go a dozen trochus, 6 turbos. If you're gonna do blue legs, I'd probably go a dozen blue legs, and throw in a pink sea cucumber for good measure.
For the bottom?
Yeah.
Yeah.
For
You
sand.
don't like
If you have sand down there,
Yeah.
pink sea cucumbers will keep that so clean. Just add it about 5 or 6 months into your tank being cycled and put together and established, because you don't want them to starve out.
What's your opinion on Asarius?
I don't mind Asarius. I think they do a pretty good job. If you're scared of doing a cucumber, because if they die, they're toxic, so they can be dangerous. I've never had that issue, but it's possible. Asarius do a really good job. Zombie snails.
Zombie snails?
Rise up out of the.
Oh.
They rise up out of the dirt.
They do.
They're gone. You don't see them. You add some food, and all of a sudden they start coming out of the sand and like crawling across the sand bed. They do a good job of picking up anything extra that's left or bounced into crevices that your fish can't find.
Can I interject on Asarius?
Yeah.
There are 2 species that you might see in pet stores.
Yes, the gigantic one.
The one from the Pacific Ocean is much, much larger, and the one from the Caribbean is smaller.
Yeah.
So it depends. Again, he's got a 120, so the Pacifics would be fine.
Yeah. I personally like the little guys. That's just me. I've done the big guy, and they're really cool, but they knock stuff around on your sand bed. If you got like a little collection of frags, they'll just plow right through it. They don't even care. And I guess the last 2 critters, tuxedo urchins are great. Just be aware that anything that is not literally glued in place that is small, they will just pick up and wear as a hat, which some people enjoy. I've had them, wearing zoanthid frags and walk around the tank for the rest of their life like that, which is cool. They're really good with hair algae, I find. And then another, not so much detrivore, but a good cleanup crew in the sense of extra food or deceased fish, God forbid. Brittle starfish and serpent starfish. You would be surprised at how much food they can get in that tiny little circle in the middle of their body. If you have a fish go missing because it perished, unfortunately, overnight, a lot of the time you won't find it because it'll be inside that starfish, who's been like, oh, look, deceased, and then they eat it. Which is better than rotting fish in your tank, I'm just saying.
Okay, Connie asks, are goldfish and koi the only fish that can go in the pond or not?
Technically, no. Channel catfish?
Yeah, you don't see them that much anymore, at least not up here. There's a fish that's common in Europe, but you really don't see here. It's a minnow type called a golden Dwarf.
Yeah, I haven't seen them personally.
Sporadically. But for all practical purposes, the answer to that would be yes.
There are, yeah. I've seen people or heard of people who have large common plecos that they put in their pond during the summer and bring them back in their house in the winter. I'm taking your question as a fish that can stay out there
over winter.
Yeah, year long. So yeah, then I would avoid that.
Yeah. Okay, Justina, in follow-up to her fish with the hole in the stomach, says, I might get Cechem canaplex if it's bacterial or fungal because it's known to treat the hard-to-treat diseases such as dropsy and septicemia. I think it could work on the problem I had.
If it's not that specific parasite, then it probably will be effective.
Canaplex is a pretty good one. Another option would be if you can get a good, just to help with diagnosis, if you can get a really good clear picture and email it to us, we'd be happy to sort of try and take a
the email is customer service at bigalsonline.com. Brian will plug it in there for you. So if you can get a photo, then Chris and myself, it's probably just going to be Chris, to be honest. I'm not that great with diseases. He'll take a look at it and tell you.
You're learning, Grasshopper.
I'm learning slowly over the course of time. I still have too much Latin in my head.
The correct answer is, I'm so good at keeping fish and my fish never gets sick.
Haha! That's not true. I'm pretty good, but things happen. Everybody's had some disease at some point. I've had, back in the day, I had a Grammy that got dropsy. I was like, well, what do I do? Nothing, apparently, because nothing worked. Nothing I got to watch.
All right, guys, we're going to move on to our next question. trying to avoid reptile questions. We are trying to stick to aquatics, so in the future, I think we can hold specialized reptile Q&As. So
Sure.
we'll answer this, but I think it would be better to bring in a couple more reptile specialists as well in the future, just to answer your questions better, guys. So we will try and answer this to the best of our ability. Elvis asks, do you think feeding leopard gecko pinky mice is a bad idea?
Yes, it is a bad idea. Don't do it. They're not really designed to eat pinky mice. Once in a while is not going to hurt them. It's not. But that's just not a good idea.
Why?
The protein, fat, and bone content in a pinky is vastly different than what you're going to find in something like a cricket, mealworm, phoenix worms, which is what I'd probably put you on if you wanted to supplement the diet. Those are better options. Pinkies can be very hard for them to digest. I've seen leopard geckos regurgitate large food items like that didn't, stay in there. They end up getting sick from it. Doesn't happen often, but it's not pretty when it does. And just there's absolutely no need. There's just no need. Phoenix worms, they're a fly larvae essentially. They have an extremely high calcium content compared to other insects, as well as protein. And there's fat in there, but not nearly as much as things like mealworms, which are or butterworms, which are notorious for having higher fat contents. So for a good supplemental feeder, phoenix worms. Other than that, stick with crickets and mealworms if you'd like to. Yes.
I'm going to throw in something because we've touched on this topic a little bit, like with the freshwater feeders and saltwater fish.
Yeah.
It's sort of in that vein, and I want to add to that for the aquatics. You sometimes will get people, particularly people who keep predatory fish like piranhas and so forth, that want to feed them like beef and chicken and
beef heart.
Animal stuff.
Yes.
I know beef heart, a lot of discus keepers swear by it and that, but there's a lot of good reasons that the fats and proteins in a terrestrial animal largely differ vastly from the oil-based fats and different proteins in an aquatic-based animal, just like there's a difference between freshwater and saltwater food items. So, to sort of expand upon that in the aquatic realm, really avoid heavy feedings of meat to any sort of larger predators.
Yep. Great. Sturley99 asks, how many neon tetras can I put in a 10-gallon?
1,000.
10.
Or the diplomatic answer of 10. Yeah, no, 10.
Yeah, I mean, if it's only going to be neons, about 10 is a pretty good number, give or take. Again, depending upon your frequency of water changes and other factors. If you're going to throw a couple other fish in there, and then just maybe a smaller school of about 6. But 10-gallon tank's good for about 10 or 12 small fish like that.
Great. Animal Anya asks, I got a betta fish, can I put it in a 2.5 gallon?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. For a solitary beta, definitely.
Ideally, maybe a few nice Anubias?
Yes!
Or the Anubii?
No, Anubias.
Okay.
Anubiases.
All right, we have another reptile one here for Thomas. How do I feed my snake? I caught it, but I don't know what to feed it.
How you feed that snake is put it back where it came from and allow it to eat the things that it naturally eats in the wild where it came from, because you're not supposed to keep wild animals as pets. And usually when I give that answer to people, I get, well, it was in a parking lot, or it was near a school, or it was somewhere that's not the wild. If it got there on its own, it's because it came from nearby. If there's a creek or something nearby, just stick it back there in a woodlot, wherever, and leave it there.
Okay, pretty straightforward. We'll move on. Justina Fife asks, for hermit crabs, is soaking salt like real marine salt, or do I need real marine salt for the hermit salt dish?
Use marine salt.
We're talking land hermits here.
Probably.
Yeah.
Use a synthetic marine salt. I can't say what is or isn't in various, pharmaceutical or health products. I just can't.
Yeah, or failing that, I mean, I don't know if you want to buy a 10-gallon package of saltwater mix for, how long would that last your land hermit?
Forever.
What about sea salt? Like just plain old sea salt?
Salt?
Would be. I wouldn't do. Wouldn't do table salt.
No. Table salt's a big no-no. Natural sea salt potentially. Again, you'd have to verify the source and verify that it's not table salt that's all fancied up.
Yeah. No. Well, I'm into the health products, so like Celtic sea salt or Himalayan sea salt, it's good stuff.
Cool.
And
I
it's
trust
gonna
Chris.
Have lots of minerals and all the good stuff in there. If you're looking for a more manageable format to buy.
Is that the pink stuff, Himalayan sea salt?
Yeah.
I have that stuff.
It's good for you.
Delicious.
Anna Melania also asks, I got a betta. He's in the corner. Can you help, please?
In this corner,
he's happiest.
The beta. Yeah, Anubias, put some plants in there, something else for him to sit on, go within. Like I mentioned, I've got a ton, like my 12 gallon, the entire bottom is just various Anubias plants, and he is in and out of it all the time. Sometimes he's up at the top and makes a nest and then goes back down and sleeps in there. And
fish often will be in one spot of a tank for a reason, so you may want to look at, is there a filter in there? Is it maybe running a little strong and that's where he wants to be? He's getting blown around. Is it a lighting situation? Light's too bright, light's not strong. Like play with any other factors that you can, and you may tweak it so that he's a little bit happier.
Yeah, if it does have a filter and it is too strong, you can put either a live plant or plastic plant in front of it to kind of disrupt that flow a bit, and that would make it more comfortable for him as well. If he does not have a filter, it could just be him in low metabolic rate mode to conserve his water, essentially, where they basically are very placid and do almost nothing because they realize that they're in a very finite amount of living space, and they do not want to foul the water that they are in.
Okay, moving on. Elvis Bear asks, are Firebelly toads good for kids, and how do you set the toads up? I need some setup ideas. We'll try and keep this one fairly brief.
If your kids have any intention of handling them as pets, the answer is no. No amphibian is good for a handleable pet, and the reason is their skin is a very permeable membrane that the oils from your hands will essentially go into them and hurt them, or anything else that could be on your hands. So they're great to look at, terrible to handle. Do I recommend them for kids? Generally not, because most kids want to play with stuff. I would go somewhere along the lines of bearded dragon, leopard, gecko, something like that, rather than an amphibian.
Amphibians, Firebelly toads, do they not also have a bit of a toxin to them, like Firebelly newts, and that as a deterrent that could be irritating to people that handle it?
You're not going to get sick unless you eat them, but
don't lick your toad.
Don't. But if they just want to look at them and they want a pet for that, Firebelly toads are very easy. You can literally just take a fish tank, put gravel in it, slope it, fill it with water so you have half land, half water. Treat it like a fish tank where you dechlorinate the water and all that. You can put some live plants in there, marginal plants. Anubias, again, work well for that. They can be half in water, half out. They're happy that way. And then it's just whatever pleases your eye, essentially. They're quite easy to set up and care for in terms of amphibians.
Yes. Not salmonella, that's a concern, right?
With anything that goes in and out of water, hand sanitizer is a must. Again, you don't touch them. Don't touch them. Anytime you go in their tank to touch anything, make sure you get rid of it. For a filter, a small internal filter on the wet side of the tank is enough to make sure everything's circulating and doesn't get stagnant and gross.
Good. The next question is, my betta buried himself. He buried himself. Do you guys know why? He just buried himself under his tank rocks.
Honest answer, no.
Test your water.
Got startled, darted in there.
Yeah, sometimes they jam themselves places.
Yeah.
They sleep in funny places. But test, if you are concerned, if something could possibly be wrong, if he's clamping fins or something, test your water, see what your parameters are like, check the temperature. If everything looks okay, then you can hopefully just write that off as him just being funny.
Well, I mean, buried under rocks. I'm going to assume it didn't bury in gravel. I've never heard of a betta diving in gravel, so I'm assuming here that there are some reasonably large rocks in the tank, so I would be concerned about the event that this could happen again and possible damage to the betta, so I might reconsider your aquascaping there.
Yeah, if he doesn't have a
most
way
betta
out.
tanks usually have only things like driftwood or some live plants, soft plastic plants. But if they're, bettas have long fins, they're not great swimmers. If they can get jammed somewhere, they're going to get injured.
Yep, potentially.
Yeah, being startled or very acidic water usually makes the fish dart like that and get jammed somewhere.
Yeah, because it's irritating to their everything if they're in low acid water and they're not used to it or not from that. So one more thing I want to mention before our Q&A is up. We have a really awesome contest that is going on. Is it going on?
It will be. It's just we're announcing it beforehand now, but keep your eyes peeled because it will be officially announced soon. But all you Q&A viewers, you get a sort of sneak peek.
There, I got. Okay, so.
And me too, because I know nothing about this. So.
We do? Yes, yes. Cool. So we are always trying to grow our YouTube channel, and we love having you guys here. And we figured a way to give back and help, promote the channel a bit as well. At the same time, we decided we're going to give away 10,000 VIP points, which is quite a lot of dollars on our website, to be honest. Yeah. Just to give you an idea of how you would otherwise acquire 10,000 VIP points, you'd have to spend $10,000 with us. So we're giving you 10,000 VIP points if we can hit 10,000 subscribers on Facebook. And then we'll give one lucky subscriber. YouTube. It's been a long day, okay? These lights are hot. YouTube. So if we get 10,000 subscribers on YouTube, because who cares about Facebook? We're going to give away 10,000 VIP points.
And let's be clear, 10,000 VIP points is not $10,000 in case any of you were unclear about that.
No, it is like $300.
It's somewhere in there. It's still a lot.
It's a lot of money on our website. And like I said, the only other way to get 10,000 VIP points is to spend $10,000 because our point system is basically 1 point per dollar spent, and then that's how people, if you haven't heard of our VIP system, that's how people end up getting like fish food for free and stuff, and help maintain their aquarium long term without spending more money than they have to.
Yeah,
it's all free.
Yeah, a pretty cool little contest we're running in the very, very near future. So keep your eyes peeled.
Not on Facebook.
Yeah,
it's on YouTube.
Definitely YouTube, and just so everyone knows, it is not for in-store. This is for online only. So just know that.
Okay.
Okay. That said, let's get back to some of these very, very, very good questions. Next question is from Sandra. She asks, can I put a moderate runny-nosed tetra school in with my live bearer tank? Mollies, platies, guppies, swordtails. I
don't see why not. Given that the tank's big enough to accommodate them, sure. They're generally pretty peaceful. Nice fish.
Yeah, I really like rummy nose.
Great. Okay. Moving on. The next question is, hey guys, looking great, smiley face.
I got a haircut recently.
It shows.
I have a new hat. It's a Big Al's hat. And it says keep on tanking right here. Yeah. I have not had a haircut, which is why I plugged my hat.
So Troxy T says, good, looking great. Also, what larger fish would you recommend for a 150 gallon?
Freshwater, I assume.
Probably. Community tank as well?
No. Well, larger fish. We're
Ripsaw.
Ripsaw.
It's not
no,
like that.
Grow it.
I was gonna say.
He's like a
giraffe cat? No, they get too big.
Stingray.
Stingray would be cool.
Stingray, or maybe your clown knife. I mean, if you're talking, well, there's some very nice. Again, I'm partial to cichlids. Jardine. If you're going to go arowana, yeah, Jardini is about the best species that's more commonly available
for that size thing.
Maybe the Asian, not the silver. It's still a little bit borderline on the silver.
They're too jumpy.
I'm sorry, I didn't see her comment underneath. She did also say, in addition, thinking something more aggressive.
Okay.
Jardini. What else?
Well, cichlids. I mean, you can either do sort of a South and Central American themed tank,
like
Sunspillums, black belt cichlids, Feste cichlids.
Red-based snooks go in there too?
Yeah, colorful.
They're
Very
gorgeous.
Cool to watch them eat. You know, wham.
Red-faced snooks, very cool.
Yeah.
Peacock bass, too
Yeah.
bad. No, they'd be good.
They probably 150. They probably do okay. That's probably again about on the smaller end of the spectrum. So yeah, either do a South and Central American cichlid theme with possibly some other preds thrown in if you're into those kinds of things like the knives or a gar. Within say the African or Rift lakes, there's some pretty neat big. Mostly haplochromites that would work quite nicely. I hate the term, the old Malawi eye biter, the Haplochromis or Dimitochromis now compressiceps. That's a really thin triangular guy, not the Tanganyikan compressiceps.
Yeah, the longer guy with like the flat face almost.
Males are gorgeous.
They're very cool fish.
They're brilliant blue with a lot of red or orange in the fins, and they'll get about 12-14 inches for the males. Venistus, Fuscotaneatus, Polystigma, Livingstoni.
I was just going to say Livingstoni.
Buccochromis. There's a whole bunch. I mean, that's one of the things that I really like about the Rift Lake cichlids is that you had cichlids that occupied every single niche that you can imagine.
Yeah.
So there are these massive big cruise predators that are out there. And, these are fish that can get well over a foot. Even some of the Borellis, like the Cadango, the cherryfin Borelli. Gorgeous fish. So either you're going with, moderately sized South and Centrals, because some of them do get, possibly even too big for a 150, or the really larger species of Rift Lake and mostly Malawi preds.
Or if you want to keep it super common, get an Oscar.
And maybe a fire eel or two?
Yes!
Or a tire track.
Yes.
Fire eels get about 3 feet, tire tracks maybe a little bit smaller.
A wee bit.
Yeah, they're still big. Another one you can hand feed. It's my buddy George. We used to dig up earthworms from the garden or prawns and just.
Really?
Yeah.
That sounds cool.
He grew a fire eel got it from me at about 8 inches to 2 feet in a year.
That must have been like a
big
eel.
That's sick.
Jeez.
All right, Ashvini says about his question. I believe his question was about not cleanup crew. I forget what his question was. I have to go back and see. But he says, "If was my question too hard, please forgive me, Thomas. You are a really cool person, and I look up to you as an inspiration. Thank you, and continue to do what you do."
Thank you. I'm sure your question wasn't too hard. I think. What was the question, Brian?
I'll have to go back and check.
I really appreciate that.
Inquiring minds want to know.
I'm just.
I'll go back and check.
Chris and I are just hobbyists who happen to work in the industry, and we enjoy it. So this, as much as it is our job to sit here and answer questions for you guys, it's also our pleasure. We get to talk about our hobby all day long. It's a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, he asked. Ashvini asked about what fish he could keep if he was an experienced fish keeper, and that's.
Right. It's just a super open-ended question.
Yeah, it's not that they're hard. A lot of these are, you don't have all the details. They're very, very open-ended.
Or just really a matter of preference. Like one fish I'm dying to work with. So if you find one and feel like working with one, they're really cool. Is megamouth catfish. There's these giant gulper catfish.
Oh yeah.
They're a small catfish, very round, gigantic face that eat fish bigger than they are. It's crazy how they do it. And if you look it up on YouTube, not Facebook, YouTube, it's really incredible to watch. But they're expensive to feed, and then you're also feeding them live fish all the time.
Those ones from South America?
Yeah.
Gulper cats. Yeah,
they're cool.
We've had those in the stores before, years ago.
What'd you keep them with? Nothing.
Nothing. In fact, I think they ate each other.
Jeez.
All right, Ashvini, so thank you very much for making Thomas blush. That was nice. And everyone, we are getting to your questions one by one. We are starting to run low on time. We've been at it for about an hour and a half now. So we are going to get to everyone's questions.
I gotta go soon.
Fair enough. So we're going to get everyone's questions. So we'll keep it brief but informative. All right. So we will continue to answer questions. So Fish9371 asks, how do I make my rainbow shark less territorial and aggressive towards my dwarf gourami? If this helps, I have a 29-gallon with a big piece of driftwood and fake plants.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, get rid of the shark.
It's very hard to change a fish's behavior. if not just about impossible.
It is pretty well impossible. If that's that fish's temperament, that's pretty much the way they're. They're not like people or children that are impressionable and you can kind of guide them on their way. If he's an aggressive fish, he's probably going to stay an aggressive fish. And to be honest, I don't like keeping sharks in tanks as small as 29 gallons. They're just too boisterous for it.
Yeah, I mean, they're just a territorial fish by nature. Best thing to do if the tank is relatively bare, I think you mentioned a piece of, I mean, he's going to claim a spot in that tank regardless of how much structure you put in there. He's going to have sort of a chosen area, which is going to be a large chunk of that size of a tank,
Yeah.
as you said. Maybe some bushy plastic or live plants that just the dwarf gourami can sort of seek refuge behind. Might be the best option if you're going to try and keep them together.
But yeah, Chris is right. Visual barrier is probably the only saving chance you have in that situation.
Great. Okay. Next, Connie asks, and I believe she means at store level, so for the big super centers, where do you get your fish? Who gives it to you guys, or do you catch them, or are they bred?
I'm going to take that one, I guess.
Yep.
Where do we get?
Everywhere.
How much time do you have? We have over 20 suppliers of fish. We do buy some locally wherever we can from local suppliers and local breeders, although it's not terribly cost effective to make money on breeding fish in the northern part of North America. Your environment is against you. So fish are generally imported from suppliers from the tropical areas of the world. The big hub used to be Florida. There were over 300 fish farms down in Florida, and we are still strongly affiliated with one of them. But mostly because of cost of hydro and labor and land values, the Florida farms are shrinking, and a lot of the production of bred fish has switched to Asia. So a lot of parts of Asia, Malaysia, Indo, Thailand, Singapore, are where a lot of your bred tetras, gouramis, livebearers, and so forth are coming from. Some fish it's still more feasible, either because it's very difficult to breed them in captivity, or they don't know how, or it's simply not economically viable. So some fish are still wild caught. And we get fish from 3 different regions of the Amazon: Peru, Colombia, and Brazil. We occasionally do imports from Africa. Saltwater fish are mostly wild caught, although we do deal with tank raised clowns and anything tank raised we can get. A lot of aquaculture corals.
Yeah.
So take a look at the map of the world, and a big band around the equator.
And
that's where they're coming from.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we don't deal much with local wholesalers or suppliers. I mean, they're just buying from the same sorts of collectors and exporters that we are. So we do generally deal with direct imports in most of our locations.
And just because they're imports, like Chris was mentioning, doesn't necessarily mean they're wild caught. A lot of those fish are just being bred in those countries, and then we bring them over as captive bred fish from said country.
If we have a choice, we will definitely support or endorse captive bred, ethically collected. There's still, unfortunately, some less than savory methods of collecting some of the marine ornamentals in parts like Indonesia and the Philippines. We've worked with this Philippine supplier that we know well for well over 20 years.
And they don't do that stuff?
No.
Net caught?
Things, so it makes a lot of sense in all ways that you can think about it. You could think of things like dynamite fishing or cyanide collecting as, it's a cheap fish or whatever, but you're ruining the support base for it. So ultimately it's self-destructive. We don't want to endorse that, and it makes good business sense for us to have a better fish that has a better chance of survival, especially something that's wild caught.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think I've digressed enough on that.
Yes.
Perfect. So we'll move right along. Ewan asks, you may or may not know this, but in the Excavator Clay video, do you know how much Excavator Clay you used? And I'll answer that one, Ewan. We had our ZoomEd rep do that video, star on that video for us and actually build the thing. So I would have to ask him specifically, and I will do that. And I will add that to the description of the video. So go and check that hopefully by the end of tomorrow, and your answer will be there waiting for you, because we can't answer that right now. But look in the description of the Excavator Clay video tomorrow. It'll be there. So, moving right along. Patrick asks, do you know where I can find duckweed?
Everywhere. Where are
It's very
you?
common in the spring in a lot of, marsh areas and ponds. It looks like scum floating on the surface. Stores can get it for you.
Yeah.
Most of our stores can get it from one or another of our plant suppliers. It's not something we typically bring in because it can just become a nuisance. It can propagate so quickly.
Yeah. The only times I've ever had duckweed in my tank, I removed it and had to find ways to keep it from coming back.
Yeah.
It's tough stuff to
Taking it
control.
off your forearm hairs and out of
Yeah,
your legs.
every time you go into the tank, you end up with duckweed everywhere. It's not hard to find when it's in season.
Yeah, in the wild.
Pond season is probably like spring and summer. It's everywhere, either in the wild, and pond stores will actually have it.
Well, as I said, we can get it.
Centers.
We can get, but oftentimes we're limited by, okay, we have to buy like a bag of it this big. How much do you really want?
I know our Mississauga location actually has some right now.
Yeah, we get it in portions. I will throw out there that there are some cooler, similar floating plants. Salvinia, Azolla. Look those up. They're pretty cool, and we can get those too. And
Larger leaf,
yeah.
easier to control.
Yeah.
Hairy leaves, very cool looking.
Okay, guys, as I mentioned, we're going to get to all the questions, but we're going to keep the answers fairly brief just to save some time. And if you have any
Shut up, Chris.
If you have any follow-up questions, guys, email us at customerservice@bigalsonline.com, and we'll hash it out with you. So we're going to move on. Another question from Ewan. I'm not sure if you guys will be able to answer this or not, but he asks, why do some fish eat their food and spit it back out and then swallow it again?
They're
tasting it.
Yeah, palating the food. Other fish, they'll grab food, and if it doesn't feel right the first time, they'll spit it out and pull it back in. I've seen bass in the wild do this with crayfish because they grabbed the wrong end first and it just didn't feel right, so they back out, back in. Fish will often do this with pellet foods. As soon as it goes in the tank, if they don't have the strong back, I forgot.
Pharyngeal bones?
Thank you. Pharyngeal bones to crush it, which bigger cichlids do, but smaller fish might not, or even younger cichlids might not have the power. They'll pull it in, spit it out, and keep doing that until the pellet's soft enough that they can get it down.
Okay, cool. Next, what's your favorite semi-aggressive tropical fish that's up to 4 inches or less that's good for beginners?
Semi-aggressive tropical fish, 4 inches or less.
Rainbow fish?
That's actually
I really love rainbow fish.
Yeah.
Gorgeous.
Bozeman.
Any of them. Put them in a tank where they get a little bit of indirect sunlight in the morning and watch the males flare up and color up. Fantastic.
That's a solid answer. I don't even know if I can top that.
Aurelius barbs?
How about this? How about maybe you want an oddball fish, 4 inches or less, that's semi-aggressive. How about butterfly?
African butterfly?
Yeah.
It's a neat fish.
African butterflies, they stay at the surface. They are really weird looking fish. They look almost like they're in the air on a family.
They look like they want to take off.
Huge fins, kind of prehistoric looking. Anyways, that's mine. I had to be different.
Okay, great. Puppy Pop asks, and we had this question, I think, toward the beginning, so we'll just kind of give a brief answer to it now. What do you recommend for tank mates with bettas? I have apple snails and trumpet snails with my male bettas that do great, but is there anything else?
Anything it can't swallow, anything that's not going to pick on it, and anything it can't perceive as another male betta.
So things with big fins like guppies are a no-no for the most part. Things that can outswim them are pretty good too. So if it's in a decent sized tank, Danios can be okay. White clouds can be okay. Bigger ones, as long as they can stay away from them.
Mid-sized tetras, platies.
Yeah. Lots of stuff. But provided the tank's going to accommodate those fish as well.
Right.
All right, solid. Tamatam asks, and I'm sorry, I'm going to try and translate this as best I can. Hello, do you guys know how wet hygrophilia get holes?
How hygrophilia, that's a plant.
How wet hygrophilia get holes?
Well, something may be nibbling at it. So barbs, gouramis, a lot of fish like to pick on it. They have depending upon the species, they have relatively thin leaves, polysperma and stuff.
Yeah, hydra.
Otherwise, you're looking at a deficiency, right?
Potentially. I've never seen, if they're like actual holes through the leaves near the center and the edges, it sounds like they're getting eaten. If you're getting yellowing or browning around those parts and then it's turning into a hole, that's a deficiency. That could be any number of things. Iron, it could be just a general lack of nutrients, it could be a lack of CO2 that's preventing them from photosynthesizing properly, and then they're getting some leaf rot.
Okay. Nirmal asks, hi, I want to know if I can have a turtle without doing a half land and half water.
Yeah, get a fly river turtle. They're illegal. No.
Or you get a sea turtle.
Yeah, those are
That's also illegal.
Unfortunately, not really.
Soft shells?
Yeah, you could, but they still should be coming out to bask.
Yeah.
Yeah, they still bask. Soft shell turtles still bask. So the short answer is no. The long answer is maybe, but probably not the best idea.
No.
Right. Matthias asks, what's the best canister filter for a 200-gallon tank?
2 of them.
It's actually not a bad answer.
Don't rely upon one filter.
If you have 2 filters, if one ever goes down, you've always got a second one already running on the tank, so there's your backup. If you have 2 filters, you can alternate maintenance on them so that you never have a deficiency of bacteria. You do one week and one the other week or whatever. Space them apart. It's healthier for the tank. It's safer for the tank. You end up with more flow in the aquarium because of that as well, and less dead spots. So there's lots of reasons to do it, not a lot of reasons not to do it. But let's say you don't feel like having 2 filters running. For a 200-gallon tank, Eheim makes a larger filter. The Pro 32080 is pretty beastly. That would not be a bad option. If you want to go a little less expensive because you don't drive a Ferrari like I do, then...
You do?
I don't. I'm just kidding. I spent all my money on aquarium stuff. Then go with a Fluval FX6. That's another good option. Pretty big canister. It'll do a decent job by itself. I still like Chris's answer of 2 canisters better.
Okay, great. Next question from Scott is, what are the care requirements for Leartail Anthias? Are they easy to keep?
Leartail is the Squamopinus.
Squamopinus, yeah.
So yes, they are relatively easy to keep.
For Anthias, definitely are the easiest, probably, to keep.
One of the easiest species, one of the smaller species.
Feed
them. Feed them 2 or 3 times a day. That's the care requirement for almost any Anthias.
And
they're plankton eaters and continually munching.
They do have a pretty complex hierarchy that they follow. You'll have males have their own hierarchy with their females, and then their females have their own little hierarchy with a main female that kind of controls the group. You have to be careful because unless you have many or one, you will find that you will lose Anthias over time. So many being, in my experience, 6 or more females to 1 male. Otherwise, if you have 3 females and a male, you'll notice one female gets skinnier and skinnier and skinnier and then drops off because the 2 dominant females are keeping her from eating or participating the way she should in tank community, being a part of their school, essentially.
That's a common fish dynamic. You see that a lot with cichlids too.
So, but because Anthias have that extremely quick metabolism where they're eating all the time and constantly swimming, they're one of those fish you should, if you aren't feeding your tank 6 times a day in small amounts to keep them happy or more, put a feeder on the tank to do it for you because they need a lot of food to stay happy. But yeah, so keep a bunch of them or keep one, and they're probably the easiest Anthias.
Great. Keith asks, what's a freshwater fish for a 10-gallon?
What is a freshwater fish for a 10-gallon?
What are some good suggestions?
Tetras, platies, one of the
Mollies.
easiest. Mollies will get big and boisterous. I honestly, I wouldn't.
You don't like them? That's fair.
Intense. Well, just the males are more aggressive.
They are. They get big.
Platies, swords and mollies. The males are mean. Hatchet fish. If your tank's a little bit more established, that's a cool little fish.
They make me happy.
Shrimp.
Shrimp are great.
Yeah, Mexican dwarf crayfish.
I was just about to say that.
Cory cats. Possibly a dwarf cichlid again in a more mature tank.
Did you say dwarf neon rainbows?
No, but that's a good one. Or featherfin rainbows is another nice one.
So,
Harlequin rasboras, nice, pretty little fish.
Yeah, solid.
There's tons.
There's there's tons of stuff.
Cool. John asks, what kind of South American cichlids would you recommend for a 65-gallon?
It's a little on the small side. Geophagus, best choice. Things like convicts
what
are
about
small
dwarf?
enough, but they're mean as hell. Dwarf cichlids, yes. Epistos.
Epistogramma, rams would be okay.
Yeah. I like the geos.
What about jewel?
That's, well, it's a West African, but
they can, but
their
that kind of
habits are
water's
more or less
okay?
the same. Oh yeah.
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 So jewel cichlid.
But they're
might be
mean as
one.
heck. So you know, if you're gonna do a jewel, then you're matching it up with something like convicts. Most other South and Centrals get too big. There was something on the tip of my... Oh, keyhole cichlids.
Keyhole, that's a great one.
Acaras. Those are your sort of moderate sized.
Blue acaras are really nice.
Yeah, and there's an electric blue version of it now. It's a
solid blue?
Completely blue. Yeah.
Okie dokie. Let's see. Next one is from Animal Anya. I got a 10-gallon tank. I have a fish. She's having a baby. Can you help?
She's having a baby. She's a live bearer. She's
Okay.
probably a Molly Platy or swordtail or guppy.
Get a breeding trap. She's probably going to have more than one. But yeah, you're going to need to get a breeding trap, and it essentially separates the babies from the rest of the tank, and also from the mother, who often has no protective instincts and will just snack on her own babies.
Or you could do nothing and just let nature take its course.
Yeah, and particularly
Usually get a
if you-
survivor or two, but
Yeah.
Okie dokie. Neon Tetra Aquarist asks, what's the best
devil's
type of...
advocate.
What is the best type of freshwater dwarf shrimp that you can keep, besides red cherry shrimp?
Any of that genus.
A mono shrimp, I still consider a dwarf shrimp. They're pretty small. They're not micro tiny, but they're way easier in my experience than cherries. Sakura shrimp.
Sakura, yeah. There's it's a genus. It's Neocardinia.
That sounds about right.
Yeah. Those are the ones that are in our water, like GTA area, hard, a bit alkaline. That's the kind of water that they do fine in, whereas it's the other couple of the other genuses, like the crystal types, that need the very soft, acidic waters.
Crystal red volcano shrimp?
I'm not
That's what
the best shrimp guy.
No worries. I think when we first started bringing in those little crystal reds, they were called volcano shrimp. I could be wrong. YouTube. It's been years since I've seen the name volcano shrimp.
Yeah. But any of the genus, the same genus as the amano shrimp, which I believe it starts with an N. It's Neocardinia.
Something like that.
Those are the easiest ones to keep, and they do come in different color forms, like the cherry shrimp. There's a yellow version.
Right.
The basic amano. Brian,
There's green
I gotta
ones
pick
now,
my
too.
son up.
No sweat.
If you want to continue, I'm gonna have to duck out.
Chris, no sweat. Anytime you're ready to go, man. I got through a lot. Thomas can, I guess, hang back and try and answer the rest.
No, but I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry, and next time we do this, hopefully I can stay longer. This is a great response, and thank you very much. Honestly.
Thank you, Chris. Thanks for coming. So many questions. Thanks a lot, man.
Okay.
Thomas's show now.
The Thomas Show. Okay, so Thomas here answering the rest of your questions, guys. Let's see here. Nirmal asked, do you guys sell turtles? If not, where can I buy them? Yes, we do sell turtles.
We do, yep. We commonly have red-eared sliders. We have, I believe we have the yellow belly cooters and map turtles. Mississippi map turtles, I believe.
Perfect. All right. Smoky Talkie Gaming asks, I'm getting a fancy guppy and I don't know any tips.
Slow and steady wins the race. If your aquarium's not set up already, go to the store expecting to get your aquarium and all this stuff, take it home, set that up first, get everything running, make sure you use water conditioner. It's essentially the basics of aquarium setup and care, and then go back and get your fish after the aquarium's been running for a few days and you've added some biological additives and stuff. Don't get too many fish at once, otherwise your tank might get ammonia real quick and then go. And that's it, man. Slow and steady wins the race.
Great. Next question is, do you guys know about Triops, the tadpole shrimps?
Yes. Triops, the tadpole shrimps. I grew those. They are awesome. We actually sell them. Very easy. So we carry a product by a company called Triops, I believe. And there's various different little Triop hatcheries that we've got and different species of Triops. I did the giant Triops. They're really cool, they grow really quick, and they're way easier than sea monkeys, in my humble opinion, and they look like little aliens. Nothing better than that.
All right, and let's see here. The final question. Chris just missed the final question.
Ducked out just a little early.
That's all right. Sandra asks, how often do I clean my fluval canister filter?
As often as needed is the actual answer. Typically, that's going to be anywhere from 1 month to 3 months. If you have a heavy bioload on your tank and a lot of waste, I would do it probably once a month. If your tank's not heavily stocked, you don't feed that much, and things are nice and placid, you could probably push it to 3 months. Easiest way to find out is open it up and have a look. The next time you clean it, clean everything out in its entirety. Make sure you rinse the biomedia and the sponges in water from the aquarium. Replace any carbon components. Replace any floss pads or anything like that. Once it's all running, look at it a month later. If a month later it still looks relatively clean, you don't have to clean it every month. Then look at it a month after that. If it's still okay, then okay, 2 months is okay. And then on the 3rd month, regardless of what it looks like, go through and rinse the components in tank water again, replace the carbon. Realistically, if you're going to use carbon, you should replace it once a month anyways, which is why looking at the canister every month is a good idea. And then, you're good to go replace the floss, and now you know roughly where your maintenance schedule is with your canister. It's hard to say because everybody's tank's different. So you have to play with it a little bit, and then once you know your tank, you're like, okay, I know exactly what I got to do.
Perfect. All right, so guys, I'm sorry that's the end of all the questions for today. We've run almost 2 hours, so we are going to have more Q&As in the future. We're trying to do it once a month at least. So thank you so much for all your questions. Thanks for joining us. We really appreciate it. Thomas, do you just want to give them a quick reminder about the Coral Restoration Foundation and about our upcoming contest?
Yes, absolutely. So first off, Coral Restoration Foundation, it's a great organization that's essentially helping to restore reefs that have undergone damage from bleaching and man-made catastrophes, etc. What they're doing is essentially culturing coral and putting it back where it belongs. You can check out their website. Brian will plug it in there for you. And find out what they're all about. What we're doing is we're donating 25 cents for every Big Al's branded product that is sold in the month of May. Whether it's a product that costs 50 cents or $6, doesn't matter. We're giving 25 cents for every product. And that's how we're going to help contribute with your support. We've also teamed up with a bunch of our vendors. For every month, there's a different vendor who will then take 25 cents of their hard-earned corporate money and send it way over to the Coral Restoration Foundation to help save our reefs. That way you guys have some variety in the products that will help make that donation, and we can get those reefs back in the respectable condition that they should be in, because I love the reef.
So what kind of, just for an example, what kind of Big Al's branded products do we carry that people might find useful?
So we sell a Big Al's branded bucket. We've got gravel cleaners. We've also got water conditioners, various sponges that fit some models of filters like AquaClear. We've got our awesome filter floss rolls. We actually just added 2 maintenance kits products, which is basically everything you need to clean your tank in a bucket. So the gravel siphon, everything's included for a sponge. And then also a couple of decoration packs. So any of those items that you would purchase, if you type in Big Al's on our website, it'll pull up our products. That's what'll get you there. I believe next month is going to be Omega C products, foods, and then the following month is ZoomEd, and then I don't know what's after that, but we got more vendors for the rest of the year. So booyah. And then we also have an awesome contest going on. If our YouTube channel, not Facebook channel like I said earlier, if our YouTube channel gets 10,000 subscribers by such a date, which we have not decided yet because why not just leave this open-ended, we're going to give away 10,000 VIP points to one of our lucky subscribers. 10,000 VIP points is I think a few $100 worth of points on our website, so you can buy whatever you want with it, and that's a pretty hefty prize. It's pretty cool. Just so you know, the only other way to get 10,000 points would be to spend $10,000. So that's crazy.
Perfect. So with that said, guys, we are wrapping up, and we will see you guys in the next live Q&A featuring our aquatics experts. So again, thank you so much for all your questions. We can't thank you enough for that, and hopefully we were a help to you.
Keep on tanking.
Bye, guys.